Picture a funeral in much of the Western world. Black suits, black dresses, black ties, dark shoes. Even before anyone speaks, the room tells you what kind of moment this is: quiet, serious, and heavy with loss. But in many Asian traditions, the color of mourning can be the exact opposite: white. The same color that many Western cultures connect with weddings, innocence, or new beginnings can become the color of death, farewell, and spiritual release. So why does one culture wear the color of darkness to mourn, while another wears the color of purity? Who decided which colors belong to grief? And why do humans need color to express something as deep as loss? To understand that, we have to go back to the moment humans first began dressing grief in symbols. Let's get into it right here on Secrets of Simple Things. Mourning had colors. Long before modern funerals. Long before modern funeral homes, black suits, or formal dress codes, humans were already using clothing to show grief. Across ancient societies, what a person wore after death was a public message. Funeral clothing told the community that someone had stepped outside ordinary life. They were not dressing for work, celebration, trade, or romance. They were dressing for separation. Their clothes marked a pause in normal time. In ancient Rome, mourners sometimes wore dark-colored togas known as toga pulla. The darker fabric suggested sorrow, seriousness, and distance from everyday public life. Meanwhile, in ancient China and several other East Asian traditions, white became closely connected with death, purity, the spiritual world, and the end of life. One color darkened grief, the other emptied it. That contrast matters. Mourning colors were never just about beauty. They were social signals. But if many cultures had their own symbols, why did black become so powerful in the West? Why black feels like silence? Black has a strange emotional weight. It reminds people of darkness, night, endings, silence, and seriousness. It does not shout for attention, it absorbs it. That is why, in many Western funerals, black feels natural even before anyone explains the rule. When someone wears black at a funeral, the message is immediate. This is not a party. This is not a casual gathering. This is a moment for restraint, respect, and quiet attention. The clothing speaks before the person does. Black also reduces personal display. A bright outfit can express personality, confidence, or celebration. Black does the opposite. It makes the individual less visually loud. In a room full of dark clothing, no single person is meant to stand out. That matters because a funeral is not centered on the guests. It is centered on memory, loss, and the person who has died. If everyone arrived in bright, competing colors, the ceremony might begin to feel distracted. Black does something unusual. It makes the person wearing it less visible, so the loss itself becomes more visible. But black did not become a funeral color only because it looked serious. It also carried power, cost, and status. The practical side of black mourning. There was also a practical side to black mourning. In earlier centuries, deep, lasting black dye was not always easy to produce. Good black fabric could be expensive, especially when it needed to look rich and formal. Because of that, proper black mourning clothing could sometimes signal more than sadness. In some periods, it could also suggest that a family had the money and social position to follow mourning customs correctly. This did not mean black belonged only to the wealthy, but formal mourning dress could become part of social expectation. Black also helped create unity. When a room is filled with similar dark clothing, the atmosphere becomes quieter and more focused. Personal fashion fades into the background, and the ceremony feels more solemn. By the Middle Ages, black was already strongly linked with mourning in parts of Europe, but in the 19th century, that connection became even stricter. When grief became a social system. In the Victorian era, mourning was not only a private feeling, it became a public code, with rules for how grief should look, how long it should last, and when it was acceptable to soften. The most famous example came after Prince Albert died in 1861. Queen Victoria wore black mourning clothes for the rest of her life. As one of the most visible figures in the British Empire, her grief became a model. Across Britain and later across much of the Western world, black mourning dress became a powerful social expectation. For widows, the rules could be especially strict. Many were expected to wear full black for 1 to 2 years. Some wore heavy black veils in public, turning grief into something people could see moving through the street. Even jewelry followed the language of mourning. Some pieces used black enamel. Others preserved a lock of the dead person's hair, turning memory into something worn close to the body. Later, mourners might enter half-mourning, slowly adding gray, purple, or lavender. Victorian mourning turned grief into a visible calendar. Society could almost read how long someone had been mourning by looking at what they wore. But while the West was deepening its connection between black and grief, other cultures were using the opposite color for a very different reason. Why white can mean death. In many Asian traditions, mourning has often been associated not with black, but with white. Historically, cultures such as China, India, Korea, and Japan carried traditions in which white could be connected with funerals, death, and the journey beyond ordinary life. To many modern Western eyes, this can feel strange, because white is often linked with weddings, innocence, cleanliness, or new beginnings. But color meanings are not fixed across the world. In several East Asian traditions, white can suggest emptiness, the end of earthly life, and the soul leaving the physical body behind. In traditional Chinese funerals, white clothing was often plain, sometimes made from rough or undyed fabric. That simplicity mattered. A funeral was not supposed to become a display of wealth, beauty, or personal style. The clothing helped keep attention on honoring the dead, not impressing the living. In Hindu traditions, white also carries deep mourning meaning. Family members may wear simple white garments because the color suggests purity, peace, and spiritual release. Bright colors are usually avoided because they are associated with celebration, pleasure, and the active world of daily life. White is not always the color of beginnings. In some traditions, it is the color of release. It does not darken grief the way black does. It clears space around it. So the real mystery is not why one culture chose black and another chose white. The real mystery is how two opposite colors can carry the same human emotion. Two opposite colors, one human message. Black and white could not look more different. One absorbs light, the other reflects it. One feels heavy and closed, the other feels open and bare. Yet inside a funeral, both can perform the same quiet task. They separate the moment of loss from ordinary life and give that moment a visible border. Black speaks through darkness. It says this is serious, this is restrained, this is a space where noise should become silence. White speaks through emptiness. It suggests purity, spiritual transition, and the leaving behind of the physical world. Neither color is absolutely correct. Neither belongs to grief by nature. A color becomes meaningful because people agree to treat it that way through religion, history, family customs, class, geography, and belief. That is why funeral colors can feel natural inside one culture and surprising inside another. Funeral colors are not universal instincts. They are shared agreements. They teach the living how to behave when death enters the room. And like all shared agreements, they can change. Are funeral colors changing today? Today, funeral colors are becoming more flexible than they used to be. Many people still choose black because it feels respectful, modest, and familiar. But more families are beginning to ask a different question. What if the clothes should reflect not only the death, but also the life? That is why some modern funeral invitations now say things like, "Wear bright colors," or "Please don't wear black." A family may choose a loved one's favorite color, a sports team color, or simply a brighter palette that matches the person's energy and personality. This does not mean black has lost its meaning. In much of the world, it still works as the fastest visual signal of seriousness and respect. People choose it because it is safe, understood, and emotionally appropriate. Modern funerals are slowly moving from only mourning a death to also celebrating a life. but whether the color is black, white, gray, lavender, or something bright, the deeper purpose remains the same. A language without words. In the end, funeral colors matter because loss is one of the hardest human experiences to explain. When someone dies, words often feel too small, too fragile, or too awkward. A color gives the living something shared to hold on to. It tells everyone, without a speech or an announcement, that ordinary life has been interrupted. That is why black became so powerful in many Western cultures. It carries grief through darkness, seriousness, restraint, and respect. And that is why white can carry the same weight in many Asian traditions. It speaks through purity, emptiness, spiritual transition, and release. These meanings did not come from fashion alone. They were shaped by religion, history, class, royalty, psychology, family customs, and beliefs about what happens after death. Over time, people learned to read these colors almost instantly, the way they read a bowed head or a lowered voice. In the end, funeral colors are not really about what people wear. They are about what people are trying to say when words feel too small. Someone important has been lost, and this moment deserves respect. If you enjoy discovering the hidden history behind ordinary things, subscribe to Secrets of Simple Things. And if there is another everyday custom you have always wondered about, tell us in the comments. Your idea might become the next story we explore.